Welcome to our beEmboldened live stream for November. We are going to focus all on mentoring this month. So we're excited to have four guests or three guests for the first time. All of our mentors here, Naomi, Anna, and Teasi, joining us to talk about mentoring, which is a key service at beEmboldened that we provide. And we've seen tremendous growth in those who have taken us up on this amazing one-on-one or group setting to really dive deep into healing, getting questions answered, and all the kind of things that we're going to talk about. What is mentoring? Why does it matter? What do people need to know about mentoring? So thank you for all for being here. And I have my list of questions, of course, to dive in. But if anyone watching has a question that they'd like to add to the chat, we welcome that at any point. And or if you're watching the replay, please add a comment. We would love to connect with you and get your question answered. Before we dive into introductions, I'd like each of our mentors to introduce themselves. Naomi, is there anything that you'd like to share before we dive in?
As before an introduction, or are you asking me for an introduction?
Before an introduction.
Did I have something in my notes that I'm not thinking of right now?
No, I just feel like I don't want to take charge if there's something.
Oh gosh.
That,
oh, you're great.
say.
No, I love this service. It's kind of funny because I didn't originally plan to offer mentoring when I started beEmboldened, but it didn't start as beEmboldened. It started just on my story. And so I didn't have kind of that vision for what would come next. I was very focused on, okay, I'm going to tell my story. And that was where I needed to be at that time.
Yeah.
And then this was the first real, service that we added. And it's been 2.5 years now, I think. And we've served, oh my goodness, I can't remember the number I recently gave you for where we were at around the middle of October. Was it like around 800? How many hours?
It was closer to 900.
Yeah. And that was several weeks ago, but about 900 contact hours for mentoring services this year. And we're now past that. So yeah, we very well will break 1,000, and that's up from, I think that'll be close to double last year. So it's just been incredible. I'm so thankful that we're doing it. And I'm thankful that I have these amazing women beside me doing it. It is such a gift to have others on your team doing such nuanced, such important work, but also such nuanced work that you can just totally trust to be doing it. And I have that, and it's such a blessing. So yeah, I'm excited for everyone to get to hear more from the two of them too.
Oh, I'm excited too. And that just reminds me, when we first started doing mentoring, I was like, how on earth are we going to find any other mentors besides Naomi who have the qualifications and the passion and the ability and the nuanced experience and ability to do this? And look, here we are, 3 years down the road with three amazing mentors. So let's dive in and hear from you all. Let's start with what you're passionate about. Why are you passionate about the work of mentoring those who have been religiously abused? Naomi, let's start with you, and then we'll pass it around.
I'm passionate about it. Of course, I understand what it feels like personally to have such an experience. And so I understand the impact. I understand the long-lasting impact. I understand how difficult it can be to find support. It can be difficult just starting with someone believing you, let alone knowing how to come alongside you. But I think I'm the most passionate about it because people lose their relationship with Christ because of it. And they don't know the truth of who he is. They're not sure how to kind of disentangle what's God and what's not, what was people and who is he really. And I think that is the biggest tragedy here. And that's my biggest motivator for doing this work, is because I don't think that we can allow that to happen.
So good. Teasi, what about you?
Yeah, well, first of all, I'm super honored to be a part of this amazing team, and thankful for beEmboldened in general, just all the services and the heart behind this organization. But I think my passion comes from a similar place, having walked through the pain of spiritual abuse in my own life, walking through the consequences and the ripple effects, but also just seeing the devastating tendency or possibility out there for people to misinterpret the failures of man and, attribute them to Jesus and then walk away from the remedy, the very healer, the very one we actually need. And so to be a mentor to someone, to maybe just walk beside someone, to help them to have a safe place to be honest, to express doubt, to express insecurity, and in a place of understanding, and to gently, like nuanced in a nuanced way, just be kind of an educated friend who can ask the right questions, and potentially just offer that ability to discover, answers, wording to describe what they've been through, and really find their way back to a place of wholeness and hope.
So beautiful. Anna, would love to hear from you. What makes you passionate about this work?
I am super passionate about this because I was at a time once where I really needed a mentor and there wasn't anyone to help me. And so there's a wonderful full circle aspect to this for me. For example, I was with one of my mentees right before logging on with y'all. And one of the things that he said to me was, "It's so nice. I don't have to explain why I'm talking about this to you." He's like, "I would have to explain why I actually care about this if I was talking to anybody else." So we could just kind of get straight to the issue. And it was extremely impactful. And this is why I'm so passionate, is because I remember that feeling. And I remembered feeling extremely lonely. And I don't have to feel lonely anymore because I get to have a whole team of people that know exactly what that's like. And we get to turn around and help that loneliness be completely dismantled in our culture for everybody who's experiencing these things. And it's wonderful. It's outrageously rewarding.
What a gift. What a gift you get to bring to the table for your mentees. That's incredible. Anna, I'd love to hear, we're going to go through our next introduction question of what qualifications you bring to the table as a mentor.
I'm all across the board. My huge hobby, I don't really have a hobby, and that's because it's academics. So I have, as Naomi will tell you, I have a little bit of a problem because like I'm always in school and I love it. So I hope that I can bring some credentials to the table. I got started in my academic career with Cambridge, and I have 2 undergraduate degrees, one in religion, another in philosophy. And then I have a master's degree from Reformed Theological Seminary. And I'm working on my master's of psychology of course of control, which I'll be finished with in the spring from the University of Salford, and then hopefully beyond to PhD work with Aberdeen shortly. But all of my work is the intersection of theology and psychology. And so that's kind of what I bring to the table when you have me as your mentor, as I'm constantly interested in all of the neuroscience behind coercion and how this affects not only cognition, but your emotional state, and how your emotional state affects your cognition when you're in settings where you've been abused in this capacity. And I love it, and I want to spend all of my time there. So hopefully that'll be credentialed enough. I'm almost finished with my license, so I'll be a licensed clinical pastoral therapist shortly here in the state of Tennessee.
That's amazing. The reason we ask this question, we really want people watching to get to know you all and get to know your background and what you bring to the table. It's not a brag sesh. It's just you guys have experience that's so helpful and so can speak into this and be a gift to your mentees. So that's why we're asking this question. So Teasi, and the beauty is that although qualifications are different, so you'll find that out as you hear Naomi and Teasi share. But Teasi, what qualifications do you bring to the table for your mentees?
Well, I'll start with my education. My undergraduate degree is in education. I taught middle school in the public schools and Christian school for many years. I taught middle school, high school, so I've got a teaching background. I have a master's in pastoral counseling from Liberty Theological Seminary, and I am one course short of getting a certificate in Christian apologetics from Southern Evangelical Seminary. So those are my academic qualifications. I think on a more heart-driven, well, not that my education isn't heart-driven, because it is. It's all heart-driven, but just having walked the walk, walked through the experience, being able to comfort others with the comfort I have received, walking through incredibly painful, very destabilizing situations and coming out standing on the rock. wanting to just be able to offer what has been tested in my own life. So those would be, I guess, my qualifications. I also don't have hobbies other than studying and learning. If I could get paid to be in a classroom the rest of my life, that would be my ideal job. But now that I'm a little older, I'm a grandma now. I find that my reading, my brain cells are morphing and changing, and my ability to retain is slowing down a bit. And so I'm loosening up a little and enjoying my grandbabies. But I think Anna and I are very kindred in our desire to continue to be lifelong learners.
So good. And the wisdom that you bring to the table that you didn't mention, but big grandma wisdom is real. So you bring that as well. Naomi, what about your qualifications that you want to share with people?
So I definitely am all about the lifelong learning thing, but I never want to write another paper again. And so we may not all be on the exact same page for that one. So although I do have my eye on a doctorate now in trauma-informed, like a trauma-informed doc. I can't remember exactly what the title is. And I'm like, oh no, don't tease me with that. Just the second seminary came out with it, just was announced for next year. And I'm like, oh, that one might get me. But I already have a trauma-informed master's. And so it's probably really not necessary. I have a master's in social work ultimately from the University at Buffalo. I had transferred from University at Michigan and graduated from the University at Buffalo for that degree. And it was a really unique degree because they were going through their reaccreditation process at the time. And in that process, they had some different options of things they could do. And so they were piloting a new way of doing their programming. And they piloted having an entirely trauma-informed master's degree. And so we had to talk about trauma and how it intersected with the curriculum in every single class that I took for that degree. So it's a really cool program, and it set me up in a way that I think was unique at the time. Again, it was something being piloted way back then, because I know I look so young, y'all, but I'm just not quite as young as I look. So I don't even know if they're still doing it. To be honest, I haven't tracked it, but it was a really cool opportunity. It definitely has served me well in this capacity as well as in my own life. And then as far as school, then I'm a licensed mental health professional is what the title that we have for social workers who go the clinical route in the state of Colorado. So a licensed mental health professional, and I'm finishing up. Awful story behind this, but I had to redo my clinical level of licensure. I had all of the hours done, all the supervision hours done, and got hit by a car and did not get all the paperwork in on time, as in like 2 years late, because it was a 3.5 year recovery. So they reinstated my base level license, but I had to redo everything for that top tier licensure that you can get in my career field. And so that will be wrapping up in February. I can be done February 1st. And so then I will, be close to having the clinical piece. So, and that's it's relevant, but it's also not, honestly, for beEmboldened. So I just want to share that. If I can pause here, everyone, for a second, I just want to kind of go into this a little bit. When we talk about like Anna being licensed, myself being licensed, within beEmboldened, we do not do the like clinical stuff that is, that you have to be licensed for, because we're working outside of our state. And sometimes we're actually working internationally. I've got clients in Switzerland and Australia and Africa and Italy, and the licensure doesn't mean the same thing there. And so there are restrictions on what we can and cannot do when we're talking about mentoring with beEmboldened legally, so that we don't get come after for that. And we also want to make sure, of course, that you're getting the support that you should be getting in the way in which you should be getting it. So we care about doing everything as it should be done. So with that, the reason we state those credentials, if we have them, is because we still have been trained in these things. And so if nothing else, it's going to help us recognize if maybe there's something going on, and we'd be able to help you with a really good referral. And we could also be someone who's a part of that team. So I know I've had clients where they're going to start seeing someone else within their state for another aspect of their healing, but I'm able to be a part of that team still, and even collaborate, and even maybe have sessions with that other person and myself at the same time to help communicate, that religious trauma piece of it that maybe that other professional isn't really an expert in. So it's still really, really great. I'm glad that I have it. It is helpful, but I'm not using it in the way in which some people maybe would assume that I am. So if you have questions about that, of like what we would do or wouldn't do, feel free to put them in the chat, reach out to us. We can have a consultation and talk that through specifically for you. I also then went and got a master's from Denver Seminary, and ultimately it's Christian Studies. This one I probably will finish, ladies. I'm 5 classes away from an MDiv, a Master's in Divinity. And so I had already done 2 of the 3 Hebrews. I got a few Greeks and like a leadership class and a preaching class or something, and I think I'm done. So, but I was creeping up on the 10-year max before you start having to do year 1 over. And I definitely wasn't going to sign up for that. So I finished it off with a Master's in Christian Studies because that's my placeholder. And then I'm able to hand that over to them, finish the other degree, and I have 10 years to finish that one. So who knows? So I have a master's degree. I just finished that in August. Actually, it was just conferred last month. So it's finally official. I had my diploma mailed to my brother because I thought I might be moving, and he sent me a picture of it the other day, and I legit cried because there is a lot of emotion that goes into someone raised in a cult where women aren't supposed to go to school, and we aren't even supposed to still be here, and women are just supposed to be in the home, and education was something that was of the enemy. And to go then to a seminary is something I never should have been able to do. And so there's something really emotional about that for me. But I needed that. Not everybody needs that, but I needed that because I didn't know what was up when it came to Christianity. And so I needed to get that degree for myself. And it's just a really amazing gift that it now has purpose here for BE too.
I don't normally use the reactions because they're a little cheesy, but I'm just going to give a cheer here.
Love it.
Naomi, speaking of which, you mentioned going to education for women was looked down upon in the background that you came from. Can you talk about just how approaching the conversation about how people may be thinking or believing that qualifications, education are bad, and then there's a bad connotation to all of these degrees in education that we've just been talking about?
Yeah, so I'm going to mention part of what I'm seeing, and then TC, feel free to jump in, but otherwise I'm going to hand it over to Anna because Anna, I think you could go on a soapbox for this for me, and so I'm going to let you have at it. So what I hear sometimes, and I've seen posts about it on social media and responses to people sharing things is, well, oh, be careful because they're licensed. If you're licensed in a state, then you're secular, and so that's going to be a problem. It's not actually going to be biblically based. And I've had people come to us with that concern. They're like, hey, I mentioned that I was going to have a consult with you guys, which I'm talking about a free 20-minute consultation that we offer to people just so you get to know us. We answer all your questions, make sure that it's going to be a good fit. And so I've heard that come up, and it really breaks my heart. It concerns me because it can really prevent people from getting the most qualified help. And so I'm going to pause there. And Anna, would you like to take it?
I would be happy to. So there's a mini war in our culture of understanding how to incorporate clinical practice and religion and clinical practice together. And so some states have done a good job of making a placeholder for those of us who want to be really, really open about where our positioning is coming from as far as like the baseline analysis. Are you a Christian first or a clinician first kind of mentality? And some of the laws out there have actually made it so that you can be doing all of their clinical level stuff and still be really, really open about your Christianity, and it doesn't affect your licensure. But not every state does have that. And so you have to kind of, as far as I can tell, the best thing to do is to be open about the fact that you can have clinicians that are Christians and are operating as Christians and operating from that worldview. And you can have ones that are not. And I always recommend to people, you just ask the person you're dealing with where they're coming from and what worldview they're coming from. But yes, there's this kind of stigma almost to anybody who has any type of clinical licensure that we can't operate as Christians, for example. And that's really not the case. We just have to be open and transparent about which worldview we're coming from when we're doing treatments and things like that. Is that the kind of soapbox you were looking for, Naomi?
Yeah, you toned it down a bit, but I'll take it.
I actually get very, very heated in this one because I see it. I can even see it from Christian counselors. Actually, I've been in scenarios where it's been me doing the clinical stuff and Christian counselors who are not doing anything clinical. And there's like this ugliness immediately. And it's like, where is this coming from? This is not even remotely Christian. We're not even discussing these things. Ask me how, for example, I incorporate clinical practice, because clinical practice doesn't require that we turn around and leave Christ at the door ever. So I don't know where this is coming from or why precisely. It's odd though. I don't like it. I don't like it. So that's what Naomi was referencing. Is I'm like, I don't want to deal with that anymore. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, it can prevent people from having the best fit for them. Someone who is licensed isn't always, I mean, TC, I know that in your profession, they don't do licensure, in the Masters for Pastoral Care, or Pastoral Counseling, they don't have a licensure track. Still very highly trained in how to come alongside and companion people. So it just depends on which degree we got and like what steps they have beyond that. So it's not that someone necessarily has to be for mentorship, but if someone does, that certainly should not be seen as a problem or a concern. If it is, again, please do ask us those questions. We want to know that we're safe for you. We want you to know that we're safe for you. And so if that is a concern, it would be a barrier in the relationship and we wouldn't be able to come alongside in the same way. And so, maybe we could help connect you with someone else. But because I talk with people all the time about it still has to be a good fit. And sometimes it's personality fit. Sometimes somebody's more drawn to one personality or one person's story than another. And that's great. The point is that you are connected with someone that you're going to be able to have come alongside you in the way that you need them to.
And in the same sense with medications and things like that, that you're not going to be judged based on how you want to take care of your healing, that we're going to come alongside you no matter what's going on. And that, if we're integrating more clinical stuff into your care on your end, that you're not going to be judged for that. And we're not going to try to move you away from that. Like you're allowed to do your healing the way that you want to do it.
Absolutely.
Except don't try to do like the psilocybin thing on your own, please. That's not something you do by yourself.
Well, before we dive into getting to talk more about mentoring, what it's all about, what people should consider, what is one thing about you that you would want your mentees to know? TC, let's start with you.
Oh, goodness. I knew you were going to start with me. What would I want them to know? That I'm super cool. No, I'm just kidding. That oh gosh, I know I should have had this prepared in advance, and suddenly I'm just totally blank. What would I want them to know? Just that I truly care, and my prayer is always that I would have the heart of Christ toward their situation, toward their healing, their goal, their personal goal, and their mentoring journey. That I'm truly not in this for glory or glam or any kind of props or anything. It's truly a genuine desire to be a minister of hope and healing, to come alongside. Gosh, I don't know if you wanted more fun things. There's not a lot of super fun things about me because, like I said, my hobby is reading and learning. That's not super exciting, but what else did you want to know? Give me an example of what would be something fun for them to know. Yeah, let everybody else go.
Yeah, let Naomi answer, and then you can answer based on that.
Okay.
Ooh, yeah, because I wasn't thinking like fun, exciting, interesting in that way either. So I don't know. So I'll go, TC, I'm going in the same direction as you, and then Anna, maybe you can be the fun, interesting one. No pressure. But so I think something I'd want people to know is that you would not have to be Christian to be my client. I have people that I meet with who are not, and I have people who I meet with who aren't really sure at this time. And that's great. So when I was initially getting beEmboldened off the ground, I just felt very strongly that it was super important, due to the nature of religious abuse, that we be very upfront with the worldview from which we are coming. And we are coming from a biblical Christian worldview. And so we want you to know that. I want everybody to know that. I think that's fair and you should be informed. Now, again, that doesn't mean that you have to be. And so the way I approach that, let's say a client who is questioning, seeking, or a client who is saying, no, I'm planted firmly in atheism right now and may stay that way. I I ask permission if it's going to be helpful at points, which typically at points it is useful, and them kind of determining where to place accountability for different things that have happened in their journey. I'll ask permission to show what is actually in the Bible and what was not. Just to help bring that clarity again on where the responsibility goes. Like it may not be in the book. It may be that someone twisted something. And so that can be helpful as somebody is kind of making sense of what was going on. And again, where to place that accountability for what happened, where that ownership goes. And so that's how we approach it. And again, people know the view I come from. So anything that I would share would be coming from, that's how I'm informed. But again, that's not required. It's not a requirement for somebody who comes to us. So it's been great to see that a mix of people, I would say more heavily people who are Christian or who are just really hoping that Christianity is still true, come to us. That makes sense based on who we are and what we talk about and the social media we put out. But it's been really great to see people reach out who are like, no, I still think that, Christians can be safe. I just found some that weren't. But no, that's not, how I'm identifying, at least at this time. So I just want to put that out there for anyone who happens to be here or come across this and is just wondering like, yeah, I don't think this is where I'm at now. Like you don't need to be.
Thanks, Naomi. What about you, Anna? What's one thing that you'd want your mentees to know about you?
That I view my job, that if I'm successful, that I will make them not need me anymore, and then we can just be friends. And so there's a comforting aspect I want them to know when they get started with me in particular, that this will be a season and it will not be in this indefinite, I have to always talk to this person because I'm never healed in the past tense. And in one sense, that's true, but in another sense, it really isn't. And so that they see that it's okay, and that the future that is coming for them is a future in which we're just friends instead of having a relationship that's on a professional level. And that I'm your mentor if you want me for the rest of your life. So you can always still talk to me even if we don't have a professional relationship anymore, things along those lines. Past that, the really fun, interesting thing, be prepared, because I'm a total gamer nerd, to have your homework from me be video games. Just heads up.
Yeah. That is a fun fact.
And I want to jump in.
Did that inspire you? Oh, go ahead, Naomi.
I want to jump in, Anna, because I'm just, as I hear people talk, I tend to think of like, what follow-up question might someone have if they're listening to this in the replay? And so when people think, of course, of that clinical side, they'd be like, well, what do you mean we can be friends after? That would be, so here's a distinction, but it still does come with some boundaries. Would you mind, Claire, elaborating a little bit on what you would mean by that?
Yeah, so there's always kind of a weirdness when you have a professional mentorship, and even on a clinical side, there are boundaries, because your job is to advocate for your client. And so it would be inappropriate, for example, for me to talk about myself during our time together. And so there's all, and this is kind of comes up with mentoring, because I would also not talk about myself necessarily unless it was absolutely necessary for the person, because the time that they have invested in us as mentors is to help them and advocate for them in that moment. And so there's almost a one-sidedness that ends up happening naturally, but it's also structured, that I end up knowing a lot more about my mentee than they know about my personal life. And so that always makes me sad, in the sense, because you can tell that they can tell that that's what's going on. And so I like to comfort them and letting them know, like, hey, we're going to keep this professional, but also we're allowed to be friends, meaning if you want to still have me in your life in a way that you have access to, and that we can talk back and forth, and you can learn more about my life too, if you want that, that's available, because this oddness is not permanent.
Yeah, so there's some room. Again, mentoring and clinical therapy does have some distinctions. And so something that I tell people when I have an initial consult with them, when I'm talking about distinctions versus what's similar, is that mentoring it's warmer and it's friendlier.
Yeah.
And so, for example, someone wouldn't even know. I mean, my therapist, if he is married, he takes his ring off, so it's like, I don't even know. I don't know if he's married. I know there's kids because he wrote a book and it says it in the bio, but it's like, you don't know anything. And that's fine. But like if I ask like, oh, what are you doing for Thanksgiving coming up? Or, any plans for Thanksgiving, just be like, oh yeah, looking forward to it. And that would be it. Like you wouldn't know anything. Whereas you can know more about the three of us just by like going on Google and like looking us up. You're gonna see more. And so there's just yeah. And if someone asked, how was your Thanksgiving? I'd be like, oh yeah, I went down to my brother's, drove down to my brother's in Houston. It was great. Something like really simple like that. So am I getting into, oh my goodness, and then this drama happened? No, definitely not. But there's a little bit more of that warmness and kind of, that friendliness. And it's a really beautiful thing, again, that we get to do in mentoring very intentionally. And it was still with the boundaries of making sure that it's about who it needs to be about. But it's something that I've really appreciated too, because there's more connection, there's more trust that is built. And from the supervisory team that I'm working with on my clinical licensure, finishing that up right now, it's interesting to see that there is some shift going on, actually, even in the clinical world of people are really lonely. People are feeling really disconnected. And in some ways, how is this model that we've been stuck on for so long, how is it actually not serving? And where do we maybe allow a little bit more room? So we're even starting to see some potential movement there, which I think is really interesting. So thanks, Anna. Thanks for helping me to clarify that.
That's great. Well, Teasi, any fun facts come to mind while we've been chatting?
Oh my goodness. I've just been listening to these other brilliant women talk about their lives and what's interesting about them. Well, this is so random and not at all related, but I did learn how to do the stenograph machine you see court reporters do. Not many people know how to use that machine, so that's kind of interesting. I never use it in my whole life. I ended up not deciding, didn't want to go into court reporting after I tried it one time after going to all the schooling. But it's an interesting shorthand that you learn. It's a completely different language. So that's kind of a fun fact. I don't know. I think the most interesting thing about me these days is my grandbabies. They're just precious. And Naomi got to meet Shep online earlier this morning. Shepard's my little grandson. He's a little over a year. He has Down syndrome, but my gosh, we're just learning that is a code word for exclusive club of blessed and loved unconditionally, peaceful, joyful people. He's just been such a gift from God to our family. So I think he's pretty interesting. Oops, I just dropped my phone, you guys. So sorry. So interesting that I shook the table. Sorry about that.
Oh,
no, that's wonderful. I mean, this is a great segue because, like you said, Naomi, there's a warmth to mentoring that maybe is different than your licensed counseling. So that leads us into this question of like, why does BE call it mentoring? Is mentoring and counseling the same thing?
It's not. And Anna, do you mind if I have you kick us off again too? And I'll jump in just to mix it up.
Just like what is the difference?
Yeah. So, well, and I can give kind of like, I mean, I think I already kind of spoke to it a little bit with some of those distinctions of what we have. So maybe just anything that you would add. Maybe I jumped a little ahead in our questions and kind of partially answered it already.
So I find that I like there's a lot more freedom, I feel like, in mentoring, in the sense that I can really, I'm not doing as much challenging or identifying things that are like distorted as much as I'm listening to the person tell me where they are and what specifically they're looking for. And with mentoring, I feel like half the time I'm not sure why I think I need this. And that part is extremely fun because I can say in a mentoring scenario, neither do I. Let's do this together. And I can do a lot of, I don't know, let's explore this, and a lot less of trying to pinpoint in a counseling session, trying to pinpoint a way forward that has to be structured, or some type of therapeutic practice that we can put into play immediately. And with the mentorship, it's like, I don't know, it's more fun. It's like doing spiritual surgery. And so you don't always know what you're going to get to. And so it's very exploratory, and it's liberating. I love it. It's extremely liberating because we can go, let's just poke at this a while. Where did this come from? And talk it through. And that part really helps, as far as I can tell in my head, the distinction between mentoring and counseling for me is I feel liberated as a mentor. I can go places I wouldn't be able to go as a counselor.
Mhm. Yeah, I think something that I'm hearing from you is it's more like a team.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really is this coming alongside. Like we don't just say that. It's not, "Hey, come and meet with us because we're the experts and we're going to be able to tell you what's up." Well, yeah, we know stuff and we're going to pick up on things. And I think why I value so much each of the three of us having a connecting point with spiritual abuse in our own stories is that it clues us into questions to ask that would not necessarily be asked by someone who didn't get it in the unique way in which we all get it because we've seen it in these ways.
Yeah.
And I hear that from clients is they'll say, "Oh, wow. Yeah, that question," or give an example of something and, "Oh my gosh, yes, that nail on the head, hit the nail on the head." And it's because I know it. It's like I know it in here first is what it feels like. Like I just know it. And that's something that we're able to offer. And sometimes it comes with a little bit of the why we know it, and sometimes it doesn't. It just depends on if that's helpful for the person to paint a picture or not. But again, I have the freedom to do that. And if I were functioning within my licensure in the state of Colorado and seeing someone clinically, I wouldn't have the freedom to do that. To say, "Hey, here is something that I experience and it's sounding similar. Does this resonate with you?" And for them to be like, "Oh my goodness, that is exactly what it is. I couldn't put my finger on it." Now we have to be careful. We're not leading and we're not, so there's considerations there, of course. So you do it when you're pretty much there, but with the person. But it's just, yeah, that additional freedom and that relational component and being able to let someone know, there's some days where people show up and they just like with a therapist, really, it's like, today's not the day to go as deep. Like capacity is low. And that's okay. We're on a journey together and we have the time that we need. And you can wrap up, like Anna said, and not need us anymore. And then maybe something comes up in 6 months and you're like, "Ooh, that's hitting different." And so then you can come back and you send us an email and we get you back on the schedule. And so we're there, until we're like really not, but in the meantime, we're here.
That's wonderful. I think you answered it in this question as well as prior, talking about not only the personal experience that you have, and that really does speak to the mentorship. Like when you think about a mentor in another capacity, you're not going to be mentored by someone who hasn't lived it. Like that's the whole point of being mentored, is someone who has a lived experience that can relate to yours. So that's why, mentoring is important for someone healing from religious abuse, and they can't just go see a licensed therapist in and of itself, that there's a value add to mentoring that's unique, versus just going to see a licensed therapist. But is there anything that you'd add to that about why mentoring is important for someone healing from religious abuse that doesn't get filled by seeing a licensed therapist who doesn't have that background?
I think I'm going to kind of retouch on something Anna had said earlier. There is a lot of teaching that oftentimes has to be done first for someone meeting with a licensed professional in their state. And it is exhausting. And I have done it. And it is incredibly discouraging because if someone doesn't understand the nuances of my context, I'm going to have to help them get that before they're going to actually be able to help me. And I'm paying them like $175 an hour while it's happening. And so it's very expensive, but beyond the financial, that resource component, it really is tough energetically. Like just my capacity to be able to retell for that purpose and to equip. And if I'm still trying to make sense of what on earth even happened, I'm not even equipped to actually do that yet. So that just adds this whole other layer to it. So part of what we've run into is we don't have enough licensed professionals who have this as an area of expertise. And that's something that we care about and something we've been talking about and something we plan to do something about as beEmboldened continues to grow. But for the time being, that's why I had mentioned, even if someone is wanting to see someone, say their insurance is going to cover somebody licensed in their state, even being able to come alongside and be a consultant potentially for that licensed person, that's a way we can go because we offer consulting for other support professionals. So just helping to shortcut for that person, all of that understanding they're going to need to then go teach and equip so that that professional can help them. I remember actually going, there's one specific story that really stands out to me, because what I learned to do is I'm going to go in with my issue, and to the best of my ability, I'm going to leave my context out of it. Now, that worked for things like having a dissociative disorder at the time, because it doesn't really matter how I got it necessarily per se. There were still, people were still able to help me back away from that ledge to stop that behavior. But if I'm going in because I'm struggling, like walking into a church, they might be able, I mean, they can help me maybe with triggers, but again, they're not going to be able to help me with the theological stuff. And that's something all three of us bring to the table, is let's look at the theological stuff, because that's one requirement of anyone who I would bring onto this team as a mentor, is they have to be theologically trained. We have to know that they're theologically and doctrinally sound. Now, we don't hold to secondary, tertiary stances. So, if someone asks me, like, what's your eschatology, like, what's your belief of the end times, be like, okay, well, here's all your options. All of these are within the realm of, biblical relevance. They could all be biblical, possibility. And so you would get to choose from there. And I can help equip you to, like, where you can go look it up and come to those decisions. So we help stay within kind of those bounds for someone who's looking for that, of like, here's kind of where we would stay within. Here's kind of your bumpers if you were bowling, is kind of how I explain it. But now I'm going off on a different tangent and I'm losing my train of thought, ladies. But so we bring that to the table, and it's a super important piece. And so I'm not going to necessarily get that. Or if I do, is that definitely sound? Because unfortunately, some of the things that people come in with when they've been to somebody before us is like if you've experienced religious abuse and the very first conversation day one is that you need to forgive everybody, I would probably look somewhere else, because we've missed some steps. We've missed quite a few steps. So I can think of one incident specifically, though, where I went in, this person was supposedly a specialist in religious abuse, and I was just fascinating to him. And at that point, I was pretty numb to that experience, but it was further harm to go in and share. I mean, that's a story I didn't share with everyone, right? I mean, that's pretty private, and to go in and to share of that, and to have the response just be, wow, like, basically, this is fascinating. It's like, that's not helpful. And so depending on what your story is, you could either get shut down of, oh, well, maybe you just misunderstood, maybe it's not really the church, that, you just need to forgive, or, that's how you're being divisive, all of this garbage that we get told. And if it's a story like my upbringing, because unfortunately I've kind of had a buffet of the incidents, but if it's a story like my upbringing, well, that's just really interesting, right? I mean, they literally make documentaries about me. There's TV series and docu-series. And so, I mean, it can be sensitized or sensationalized, and that can be a problem. So this is a place where if you come to us, we get it and we understand it in a different way, and we're able to bring these different pieces together. And I think the uniqueness is really, really incredible. And again, I'm just over the moon to have three of us on the team at this point, because yes, Natasha, it is hard to find.
Yeah. That's good. Let's get to the nuts and bolts of some of the details here, the nitty gritty. Anna, I'd love to hear from you. What happens in a typical mentoring session? Can you, for someone who maybe has never had a mentor, doesn't know what they're getting into, wants to know, can you walk us through what that person should expect? What happens in a typical mentoring session?
So as far as a typical mentoring session for me, we normally have a common goal, something that we're both working towards, and it doesn't have to be anything really, really specific, but it keeps my head on straight so that we're not just running all over the place. And so that my mentees can at least feel like what are we doing here exactly? Is it just talk therapy? This isn't just a chat session. We're actually functioning. But for me in particular, my mentees normally have been in some type of coercive environment. And so I know that, this actually kind of helps with the previous question too, the differences between somebody who knows what this is like, coercion, versus somebody who maybe doesn't. I know that in a coercive environment, you develop a secondary identity, and that's separate from you, that's basically survival only. And that if I don't regularly remind you that I'm a human being, that I make mistakes and that these things are, even in with all of my academic stuff, that I'm just a human being and that you should feel comfortable rebelling constructively against anything that I have to say, that you're not like, maybe not. Maybe that's not where we need to go with this. That if you don't feel comfortable doing that with me, that functionally speaking, I can become in your mind, I can replace whatever guru or whatever framework or of milieu control that you were already under. And that means we're not actually doing any healing anymore. You're just surviving. And it's hard sometimes for people who have been victimized in that capacity to even tell when they're switching back and forth. And so we'll do a lot of moments of constructive rebellion, where I will invite things like to be open about an emotional state, or what we're angry about, if we're even angry, and should we be angry, and things like that. Questions that are really, really important to be thinking about when you're trying to jump between your old identity and your authentic identity, the survival identity and your authentic identity. And so there's a lot of fun. I try to be as fun as humanly possible with it, and to make sure they always feel like they're not sitting in an environment with an authority. It's very important to me that they don't feel that way, and that they practice not doing that with others when they leave our session, so that their identity, their authentic identity, is placed as the authority over their healing and not anybody else. So a lot of fun, structured, like telling Anna that is totally wrong about whatever, and we'll find stuff, and then they have to practice with me. It's very fun.
Well, I think, Anna, you bring up a great point that it really does depend on the mentor. And I know we'll talk about this. We have another question later on about the fit, but like TC, Naomi, and Anna will all bring a very different perspective and personality and experience to the table. So it is important to find that fit.
Yeah, absolutely. And not because TC and I are not fun. I hope that's not what you were implying, Natasha. TC already said she's super fun. We just need to believe that.
Yes.
So, but yeah, there are different styles. And that's when we have the initial consultation. One of my goals is to get a little bit of a feel, if I can, for style, which is tough in 20 minutes, especially if someone does have a course of control background or something, but just trying to gauge a little bit who maybe would be the best fit. And there's always this disclaimer though, like you can email our hello@beEmboldened.com, our main email, and just say, hey, I don't think this person is the best personality fit for me, and nobody's going to be offended. Like we can connect you with somebody else. And with that, we do have a check-in survey that goes out around 4 to 6 sessions in, just asking how is it going with this person. So we reach out to you and you get to fill that out. This one's not anonymous. Most of our surveys are anonymous, but this one isn't, because if it's not a good fit, we would want to know who you are so that we can get you a good fit. So there is maybe that, barrier if someone's a little uncomfortable with saying so, but it's been really helpful to see that feedback and make sure that things are going well for everyone. And there was one other thing I wanted to mention. Oh, I might have to come back to it. Oh, I was going to say, the way I have it broken up, or the way we have it broken up, because obviously we're all in agreement on this. You wouldn't just be like, oh yeah, I'll take that person, when you're like, I don't feel confident with that person. So we all have our areas where we're most confident in our skill set and in what we bring to the table. And so Anna, I pretty heavily connect Anna with people who have come from the most cult-like environments, whether it was actually a cult or whether someone would call it that or not. But let's talk about those like high control, really authoritative kind of environments. And I would say I more heavily have those individuals as well, but I have a bit of a mix. So I also have individuals, not that Anna doesn't, connect with anyone, but I would say that's where my head goes when I'm connecting with Anna for the most part. And then for myself, more heavily there, but kind of a mix with people who have been a part of a mainstream denomination where spiritual abuse has happened, because we know that is a massive category of people as well. This is a huge, huge problem. And sometimes maybe it isn't spiritual abuse. Maybe it's, there's some church hurt that happened, but I'm still just struggling, with being a part of this community now. Valid. Let's talk about that. Let's come alongside you for that. And so I have a mix, but that was part of TC and I connecting about her coming on the team as being a mentor, because she's been very open, which has been such a blessing to so many about the spiritual abuse she experienced in a mainstream denomination. And so her voice for this is huge. And we've had incredible feedback. People just saying, I listened to the recent interview that TC and I did, her 5 years later, that came out on our podcast, on our YouTube channel, just a week and a half ago, I think. And people just saying, wow, that just resonated. She was saying stuff that I have felt. She was saying things I have said, because sometimes people can think about beEmboldened, I've been told, and they think cults. And that's not all that is not all that we know about. It's not, we do not only serve people who have been a part of cults. And so that was a conversation TC and I were having behind the scenes of, hey, we look at that whole spectrum, that all of it. And so having more of a voice for that area as well, in hopes of people knowing that they are safe here, that they have a place here, and having someone to be able to connect them with. So that is my plan as we continue to connect TC with the right, people who are going to be a good fit, and vice versa, is that more mainstream denominational harm that's happening. So that's sort of how I think about it as I'm connecting. But of course, personality will still come into play, but that is a factor too.
That's great. I think that answers the question too. And basically, just to summarize, if it's not a good fit, there's something we can do about that. We can find a good fit. That's what is important to do, because it just makes such a big difference with the mentoring. I know we only have a couple minutes left, so I definitely want to hit the most important questions here. But how, maybe this would be a good one for our audience. And anyone can take it. How long and how often should I receive mentoring? When do I know if I'm quote unquote done?
I can give an initial, and then if anyone wants to add on. So generally what I've seen, and I'm kind of thinking about Anna, so TC is newer, so I'm not leaving TC out for anyone who's listening, but I won't have an average yet. But if I'm looking between Anna and myself, I would say in general, the average is maybe like 6 to 9 months. Maybe that, would you agree?
Yeah, it's about, you can tell because we'll get to a point in sessions where we'll have run out of things to talk about, and I start grinning. And I'll go, see, what did I tell? Because it's all anticipatory, but yeah, it's about 6 to 9 months on average.
And
Yeah.
And I would say generally that's weekly, maybe going to bi-weekly after a little while. So it kind of, people tend to sort of, slow down. It's not just, oh, I'm meeting weekly and then boom, I'm done. And we certainly would want to have a plan for that. I have had that happen a couple of times though, where people were coming weekly, they maintain weekly, and suddenly they're like, yeah, no, I think I'm okay. And I've just gotten an email. I'm like, okay, great. Reach back out if you ever need something. I'm still here. And they do. We just had someone come back, and it's been over a year, and now they're back because something came up. And so, okay, great. So again, there doesn't have to be fear of like, I'll let them go and I'll never be able to come back. I mean, if there's a wait list, like it might take us a minute, to get you back in on the schedule, but absolutely be a priority. So yeah, I'd say 6 to 9 months. We prefer starting out weekly if it's possible for the person, just in the initial, at least I would. I can let you speak to that yourself, but or yourselves, but I think it's helpful just when we're getting to know kind of what your experience has been, and we're establishing some rapport, which is be kind of a relationship. Like, it's helpful to have those consecutive sessions for a period of time, and then we can slow that down. But of course, if it's too much, I mean, I know I've had times in my life where I could meet with someone or whatever for an hour, and I'm like, I'm going to need to sit on that for 3 weeks, actually, because that like blew my mind. And so that's okay. We can schedule week to week if we need to, and kind of move how someone needs. So again, this is very customizable. Like, if people need to go and come, and it just, yeah, we get to work together on making it work for schedules. So I think that's kind of all I really need to say there, I guess, is, yeah, it is flexible. I've also had people meet twice a week because something was really going on. They were really in the heat of it, and they're like, I need to increase, or I know, Anna, you've had people do double sessions, like someone who's like, I need to meet for an hour and a half a week versus just an hour or 45 minutes. And so, yeah, it depends on what's going on. There can be a lot of ebb and flow based on somebody's journey.
That's great. Well, last question, practically speaking, for those listening, if they're interested in mentoring, first of all, I'm going to add in the chat a link. You can fill out the intake form if that's something you're considering. But is there a cost associated with mentoring?
Yeah. So the cost is right on the website. So beEmboldened.com/mentoring. Again, we want to be very upfront about everything. And so the way we came to this was kind of a discussion of what sort of the national average or the national range of what we see. And then, okay, what can we do within that to be on the lower end, the lowest possible as a nonprofit, trying to be as accessible as we can be. And we also, have some things that clinicians have to do, like more of their like insurance billing and their, different things that they have to do that are a little bit more intense than we are required to do in our roles. So being able to offset there too, with some of the behind the scenes work. Although I will say we do have to do a lot of research sometimes, right? There's times where we definitely spend some time.
Yeah.
So with that, our initial session, we request 90 minutes if possible. It's not possible for everyone. Sometimes it's not possible based on finances, and sometimes it's not possible based on scheduling with what someone's workday looks like or whatever it may be. So, but whenever possible, we request an initial session that's 90 minutes. That's so that we can ask more of those kind of questions to get an idea of, again, what has been going on, what brings you to beEmboldened at this time, and what are your goals. That session's $175, and it's a one time, unless you're wanting to do 90 minutes in the future, and then of course we could talk about that. But that's $175, and then it's $100 for 45 minutes for a 45-minute session, and it's $130 for a 60-minute session. And the reason we offer those two time frames is because if we have a couple, having 60 minutes is definitely more helpful. So both people have a little more airtime to be able to share. And also some people are more of so verbal processors, or maybe early on as we're just meeting, there's a lot more to share. And then maybe they drop down to 45 minutes. So we've found that those three options seem to work the best. We've been in that place for a while now, and I've seen that it seems like that's going really well. For anyone where the resources, the finances are a barrier, we do offer sponsorships. That is a program that we started almost a year ago. We're still working on building it out. It's not where I want to see it be, but it is possible that there could be some funds that can be raised based on an anonymous profile that's created. And there's kind of this whole the few steps that we go through. We have a survey and we create a profile for you, and we get that up on the website, and we email it out, and we do some social media. And so that can help offset some sessions. We have had some people go through that, and they've gotten some support, and we've even had a couple people graduate from it so far where they've moved on from us. And so it then frees up some support for the next person. So that is a possibility. It's not a guarantee, but it's a possibility. And it's something that our donor development committee internally with beEmboldened is really focused on over the next years, wanting to build that out. We do not want anyone not receiving services, of course, because of resources. So we're trying to eliminate that barrier.
That's great. And for anyone who's wanting to sponsor someone, I'll put a link that you can actually help make it possible for someone to seek mentoring. And whether that's just something that you're passionate about, you want to see happen and make sure that everyone gets the services they need, or you've experienced the benefits of mentoring yourself and you want to pay it forward. We've seen several people do that, be impacted so deeply by what they're experiencing in mentoring that they're willing to step out and get that help for somebody else. Well, thank you all for being here. The time flew by. Mentoring is such an amazing service that beEmboldened provides that we hope more people can take advantage and support and get the mentoring help they need with these amazing women, Anna, Naomi, and Teasi. Thank you for being live today to talk about mentoring.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And with that, we'll sign out.